With .NET 8 out, one of the questions that comes up a lot is how do I upgrade my existing .NET application to the latest version? In this video, we're going to take an existing Blazor Server application, the Suggestion Site app, and upgrade it to .NET 8. We're going to review the process for upgrading versions, we'll clean up the NuGet packages, and we'll test the application. That's going to take about 30 seconds to actually accomplish. After that, we'll discuss the parts of the application that need to change if we're going to implement the new features from Blazor Web Apps. And right now we're not, but we'll talk about what it would take and how we'd change the application. Now, in this video, I'm using the source code from an existing project that's part of a paid course. This software is actually running at suggestions.imtimcorey.com. So while a source code is not available to download, you will be able to see the steps necessary to upgrade your project to .NET 8. If you already own the course, or if you subscribe to the All Access Pass, I'll be adding this video to and the associated source code to that course. I'll link to the course down in the description. Okay, so let's jump right into the source code. This is an existing project. Now, one of the things that you may have heard before is that there's a concept called code rot. And the idea is if you leave an application alone, it doesn't just stay where it's at, it actually kind of atrophies a little bit. And that's what's been happening with this application just a little bit. And that's because I haven't really touched it since .NET 7 when I upgraded it to .NET 7 and then made a couple of tweaks. So why would code change? I mean, the code itself doesn't change, right? Well, no, it doesn't, but the rest of the world does. And this is where people often say things like, oh, code needs to stay the same. You need to, slow down the versions of .NET. They're coming too fast and all this stuff. But the reality is the world changes. And if you don't adapt, then you fall behind. And that's what this code is starting to do. It's starting to fall behind. As you notice here, we got a warning here. It says the solution contains packages with vulnerabilities. Now, if we look at let's go with the UI project first. We'll go to dependencies and manage NuGet packages. And I'll show the installed packages that are vulnerable. And we have two, Azure.identity and the system.security.cryptography.pkcs. And if we look here, we'll see that it says that 6.0.1 is vulnerable, but 6.0.3 and 6.0.4 are not vulnerable. And again, 7.0 and 7.0.1 are vulnerable, but not 7.0.2. Now, we're going to upgrade these NuGet packages, but not until you upgrade to .NET 8. So we'll come back to that. But I want to point out that when you see this, you need to address it. And right now, the easy way to address this would be just to go to 6.0.4 because that's a very, very minor change in the package. It's not going to be a breaking change. But we're actually going to go right to 8.0. We'll get there in a minute. Now, we can also go to the class library and see something similar. Our NuGet packages, the vulnerable ones, we have the ASP.NET Core components, which again, 7.0.0 is vulnerable, but not 7.0.14. So we could upgrade to that, or we could go right to 8. And then the MongoDB driver, that also is vulnerable, but again, that's 2.18, 2.19 is not. Now that is a minor version change. We have to make sure that there isn't any other breaking changes with that. And I can tell you there's not for us, but we're actually going to go right to 2.22. So we'll get there in a minute. So that's the NuGet situation. But first I want to upgrade our application and then we'll get to our changing the NuGet packages. So are you ready? Let's start the timer here on upgrading to .NET 8. I'll still talk us through, but let's go to the UI project. And in here, selecting the project itself, we have net 7.0 for the target framework. We're going to change that to an 8. We'll select the app library, net 7.0. We'll change it to an 8. We'll hit save. We are now done. That was the upgrade process for .NET 8. And some of you may say, Tim, that's not realistic. Well, this is an actual real application running in production that isn't terribly huge, but at the same time, it's not nothing. We have integrations with SendGrid and MongoDB. We're running on Azure, and we have some other interactivity as well, but all of that just works. Now, I will upgrade my NuGet packages. So I'll manage NuGet packages in the UI. I'll go to Updates, select all, and update. Now, this is one of those, some people might say, well, don't try this at home. Well, actually do. And the reason why I say do try this at home is because if you have an application you want to upgrade to .NET 8, well, the best thing to do in my mind is to try it. Just try it. Upgrade to .NET 8, upgrade all your packages to match, and see what happens. See what breaks. Because we have this thing called source control. And if you're using source control, don't do it if you're not. But if you're using source control, well then, what's the worst that can happen? Like, you try it, it doesn't work, and so you go, okay, we can roll it right back. But before you do, let's figure out why it doesn't work. Now, in our case, I can just hit the go button. We're done, by the way. I can hit the go button, and this will actually launch and run our application. And of course, it launched the other screen, so let's bring that over here. And there we go. This is my test site. We have 7 suggestions on the test site. We can go into admin. There's no submissions here. We can go to profile and see the profile. We can, upvote this if you want to. Actually, I can't upvote that one because I created it myself. I can archive it though. There you go. Now it's gone. We have 6 suggestions. So we can filter by different type and so on. So the suggestion site works locally, and this is .NET 8, and it's ready to deploy. In fact, my deployment process, what I'll do is I'll just say, commit to my main branch, and that's my development branch. It's going to build and run on Azure automatically. So we're done. Now, I'm going to talk through some other things about, this is still Blazor Server, not Blazor Web App, and yet it's .NET 8. So let's talk through this and talk through the upgrade process itself, because that was an extremely fast upgrade. And I hear a lot of people tell me, well, upgrades are super, super hard. And so moving from .NET 7 to .NET 8 is just not practical. I'm going to stay on .NET 7 for a while, or I'll stay on .NET 6 until I absolutely have to, but then I'll grumble and complain about how hard it is to move to .NET 8. Now, as you saw, that process is anything but difficult. Now, with a larger code base, there will be things that are breaking changes in Microsoft's code, and that will take longer. And that's where when you upgrade it, use Git and try it and see what happens. And if it breaks things, then you figure out what breaks. And if that's a thing that's been deprecated or something else, or is it breaking change in some way? So there can be more complexity as your code base is larger and if you use other features that might have changed over time. But for the most part, the upgrade process itself is very, very, very simple. So why is it that upgrades are so complex? The biggest one is dependencies. That's the biggest issue with upgrades, is the idea that you've become dependent on lots of third-party libraries and packages and systems that have made your life easier, at least in the short term. But in the long term, they can actually hold you back sometimes. And this is why when you look at dependencies, you look at things you're bringing in, you have to think about both sides of it, not just one. So you might say, this is great because it adds this feature, or this way of doing things, or this method, and that's great, but that's the upside. What's the downside? And the downside is you have one more dependency that now you depend on. And so if you're ready to do an upgrade, but that dependency is not able to go to the new version of .NET, that's going to hold you back until that dependency changes. And that can change in 2 ways. One, the author or authors can change that to support the new version of .NET, and then you're good to go. Or you can take that dependency out, which is a much more painful process. So that's why when you bring in dependencies, don't just bring in dependencies willy-nilly. Don't just bring in all you want. Try to be careful and cautious and limit what you depend on. I absolutely think you should not reinvent the wheel, especially in certain areas. But you have to think through, is this really a wise place to be? Because we have such dependencies that hold us back. Even large third-party libraries with big companies behind them can hold you back. It depends on which one it is and how crucial it is to your application. So that's a big deal. The other is creating applications that are so interdependent that you really can't upgrade one without upgrading all of them. And it creates a very, very complex situation where you really, are held back by that. So let's talk about what the change would have to be in order to bring us up to be a Blazor Web App, which is different than a Blazor Server app. Right now, this is a server app, which was something we did in .NET 7. It made total sense to do in .NET 7. But now with .NET 8, we have the Blazor Web Apps, which can be, server and then WebAssembly with the auto format, or server only, or WebAssembly only, or just server-side rendered. And this would probably benefit this site. This site could have certain pages that just benefit from being a server-side rendered page instead of a fully interactive page like you have with Blazor Server. We could turn off that connection sometimes instead of keeping it open all the time. There's a lot of benefits. So let's just open these side by side. I'll actually move this over. I have a Blazor 5 app. It's Blazor app number 5. It's just a sample Blazor app that I just started up. This is a fresh from the template. It does not have any sample code in it, but it does have the authentication code in it. So let's kind of compare. The left is the new, the right is the old. So our program.cs, and let's unpin this here. And let's come to our program.cs of our main app. You also now have a client app, and unpin this. And we'll see, let's zoom out here to, we're at 110%. Let's go to 100%. And let's actually zoom out one more, or two more. Sorry, it's gonna get a little small here. We're trying to compare these two side by side just to kind of see. And, we have on the right Serilog, and we have, of course, fewer using directives. We kind of brought those over. But let's look down here. The first one that's kind of different is we both do the web application.create builder. That's the same thing. But then we have our services, which are add Razor components, which is fine, but then add interactive server components and interactive WebAssembly components. These two things are not something we're doing over here, which technically in configure services, which is this. But we have the add Razor pages, not components, add Blazor server, add server-side Blazor. We're not doing that in this one over here. We're doing server components. So everything on the right is talking about like the full application. On the left, the new one is talking about components. So it's got the base Blazor, and then it's bringing in components for the various things it needs. And then on the right, we add authentication, which we did Azure Active Directory B2C, which now on the left, there's a new way of doing identity. And so we're going to have to kind of convert over our identity system in order to work with the new identity, which is going to be a more significant change probably. So we have to kind of redo our authentication system as well as using components instead of the full server. So that's going to be a bit bigger of a change in how we work. And then we also have, of course, we're doing identity with Entity Framework. We're not going to do that in the new system or the old system. But then we do have, sending an email, which is kind of cool. But then down here, we're using anti-forgery, which we are not doing in the old .NET 7. Old, it's not really that old, but it's, older. And then kind of the big one for us is that right down here, we have the application run, but we're doing on the right, the old way of doing things, map controllers. On the left, again, map components. Again, components versus full system. And we're not setting up a Blazor hub over on the left in the new system. And we're basing everything off of app. And if we go to app, let's open that up in our components, app. We'll notice the app is our base page, whereas on the right, we have, it's not our base page, it's our routing information. So there's some differences here as well, where we're actually using different pages for our underscore host.cs HTML. We're using that, and then we're also using the layout page. And the layout page is where that similar functionality to what now is the app.razor. So you have to also change the structure of how our application starts and where these pages are. So now we're messing with the actual HTML layout of our site and how it renders. So that's going to be a difference as well. And again, there's a key component here, the blazor.web.js as compared to blazor.server.js. That's going to be a big change as well. So kind of the root, the heart of our application is going to have to change if we want to upgrade from, it's .NET 8 still, but it's .NET 8 Blazor Server. And if we wanted to upgrade to .NET 8 Blazor Web App, that's going to take a bit more work because it's kind of the foundation of our application plus our authentication that will have to change. And those are kind of bigger changes. And so for right now, I don't think that is a benefit to the suggestion site. The suggestion site works just fine as a .NET 8 app without getting the additional things from a Blazor Web App. So I am not going to, at this time, change this application. It's a .NET 8 application. It's not going to be a Blazor Web App. It will still be a Blazor Server app. Now, you may ask the question, well, Tim, then why did you upgrade to .NET 8? Because if you're not going to use the Blazor Web App, then what's the point? Well, right out of the box, there are significant performance improvements to various parts of .NET 8. So just by changing that 7 to an 8, I will gain performance in this application. But then I can use all the .NET 8 stuff and all the .NET 8 changes in my application. Now, again, I'm not going to use some of those changes like the Blazor Web App functionality, at least not yet. But if I want to initialize arrays, I can do that more easily. If I want to use the shuffle and the random, I can use that. There's a lot of things I can use that are in .NET 8 or in C# 12. It's very easy to do. Now, yes, for some things in C# 12, you can use them in a .NET 7 project, but you have to turn on the preview features and all the rest. Don't go there if you can help it. Go to .NET 8. You get those performance benefits, if nothing else. So this is definitely something I want to do. It does put it back in the LTS version of .NET 8. It keeps my application modern, which allows me to keep on top of new changes instead of falling behind the curve. And it allows me in the future to consider moving to the Blazor Web App template and what that might entail if I ever decide, you know what, I think it's time. And if I do, then I'm ready to do that because I'm already on .NET 8. I can just swap out the identity system or how the identity system works, as well as those foundational app.razor and other things that need to be changed. So that's how I upgraded the suggestion site to .NET 8. It really was just that first 30 seconds or less where I changed a 7 to an 8 and upgraded some NuGet packages. And we're done. I mean, that was done. And the review of the rest of the application is important for you to do because you have to think it through the positives and drawbacks of any change you make. So the positives of changing to .NET 8, there's performance benefits. The drawbacks, I might find a bug or two down the road. But again, it was, 2 lines had to change from 7 to 8. I could roll that back if I wanted to, even roll back the packages if I really needed to. So that's not a big deal. There's not a lot of drawbacks. Upgrading to the Blazor Web App, that's a lot more changes and a lot more testing to do in a lot more places that could go wrong. So that's a lot of downside. The upside is I'll get more performance out of it because there is better performance in things like server-side rendered and all these other things, but I'm not going to get enough that I find the downsides enough to overcome those downsides at this point. So do that evaluation. Don't just look at positives, look at the drawbacks as well, and figure out if it works for you at this time to make a change. You've got to constantly do these kind of evaluations when you are working with real production software. You can't just chase after the latest thing or chase after nothing. So try and find your balance with your application. All right. So that's how to upgrade an application to .NET 8. And yes, at some point, it may come across an application that's even more complex. You might try to upgrade a .NET 8 to see if we can get some more interactivity or more things that have to change. But it really is that easy when you're going from this application was .NET 6, we upgraded .NET 7, and now .NET 8. Keeping up to date with those changes really makes the upgrade process a whole lot faster and easier to test as we go. All right, thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.